Hey guys, so last week we showed you a snippet of our Pendergraft hinges. So without doubt these are the most complicated things we've had to build to date on Brupeg. They are not hard to fabricate, but they were just had to be incredibly precise. So yeah, just wanted to make an episode showing you the detail that was involved in them. And I also want to thank Rod McLeod, one of our Patreons. He helped design all of these in SolidWorks, so you'll see sort of a mock-up of what the doors are supposed to look like, and then you'll also see how we built it and the plans and everything that we were working to. So yeah, thanks very much. Cheers Rod, appreciate the support. So that's a bench full of projects. So these here are our door and wall mounts for the stainless Pantograph hinges. So I'm just waiting on Tom to arrive, but we're going to bend these up where these lines are. That gets bent up. See if I can show you the plan. Got wet and I threw a grinding disc through it, so that's what it's supposed to look like. See if I get a better one. Oh no, that's even worse. Alright, so that's what we've got to basically build. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just a 90-degree bend at each end and then 3 holes, but those 3 holes have to be spot on. So we'll obviously do those in a drill press or a mill. And then on this back edge here, it's not drawn on this plan, but on this back edge here we have to have 4 bolt holes that are slotted so that we can adjust the door when we have it up, you know, because obviously I'll need to be able to adjust the door so it fits in the door frame, you know, really smoothly and so on. So these slots will be basically sort of down like that, something like that, and that'll be on all 4 of them. So I'll get those out of the way. The other thing we're working on, so Pantograph Hinge Arms. So this is one of the arms, so this is, I don't know, top or bottom arm, I don't know which one it is yet. And then these are the little, so this is 316 stainless, 22mm diameter rod that we've had an 8mm hole bored through. So all of the bolts and pivots and everything holding this door together are all 8mm, and then it has 12mm or roughly, or just under ½ inch bolts that go in and hold these 4 things together. So what I need to do, I basically, this isn't cut to length yet, but I basically need to weld a pivot on like that and then a pivot on like that. However, every single arm, the distance between the 2 pivots has to be absolutely identical between all 3 arms on each door. So I've got 6 arms in total to do, and the pivot distance has to be identical. So the arms themselves, so there's different arms. So one does a straight bend here, one does a bit of a kink in like that. The main arm, what is it? Oh, the main arm does a sort of a kink like this. So there's all sorts of different shapes. However, the pivots all have to be identical, and the shapes are actually only to clear different parts of the cabin or parts of the door or whatever. So the shapes in a way don't matter. They do matter very much, but in a way they don't matter in terms of the welding that I have to do. So what my plan is to build a jig. So I've got some bit of sturdy old 16mm mild steel. So I'm going to measure exactly where I need to have these holes, how far apart they have to be, and I'll drill a hole into the mild steel, and I'll put an 8mm, I'll probably just drill and tap an 8mm bolt threaded up from the bottom, so that I know that every time I slide one of these pivots over top of that bolt, it's going to be exactly the same position as the last one, if that makes sense. And then I'll trim the arm to suit the exact length that I need, and then I'll be able to just, actually that'll be over like that, I'll be able to just sit the arm in where I need it once it's all trimmed to length. Because it'll be sitting on these, I know these are spot on, and then I'll just weld it to suit. And if I do need to do, you know, ½ mm adjustments or whatever it might be, I can just slightly alter the arm bend and that sort of thing. I don't want to go down that road, that's my last resort. But yeah, basically my plan is to try and get these as spot on as I can without having to do any of that. So let's get into building this. Righto, so if you look at this 3D of it here, the distance between this center of this hole and the center of that hole, when you measure it square, is 320mm. So if you look at the plan here, so the very back edge to the center of this hole is 353mm, and then from the back edge to the center of this hole is 33mm, leaving 320. So if you deduct the 33, you've got 320 between center and center measured square. That's exactly what this pin and then squared out this pin here measure, right? 320. However, this here doesn't line up. So the way that I've calculated it, I've got from the center to the back is 33mm, the hole is 8mm, and the wall thickness is 6mm of these machine parts, so that's 10mm that I have to deduct. So it's a 20mm piece of rod that's drilled out with 8mm, so therefore 6mm wall. So deduct 10mm from the 20mm outside diameter, so that 33 comes down to 23. That's what I've trimmed from the back edge of there to there, it's 23. Let's just double check that. It's actually fractionally less. What we got? Oh, it's 22. Pretty close. Okay, so that's correct. So I must have cocked up the other one. Okay, so that goes like that. So this arm here, where are we? Okay, so centre minus the 10mm, so it would be 353, so 343. That's exactly what I measure. So, to the side so we can get the tape measure working. It's about 342, it's pretty close. So why on earth does it not fit? Right, that's it. I'm getting Jess. She has a good brain on her. So Jess is on the phone. So I had to be a big boy and figure it out myself. And I figured it out. It's kind of embarrassing. So here's our plane again. The distance when you measure from that hole there to that hole there in that plane is exactly 120mm. So based on that, this line here, that line there that I drew, and that line there that I drew, should be 120mm apart. Here is my ruling stick, 100. So I cocked it up by 20mm. I don't know how on earth I did that, but I'm glad I did that because it makes sense why it doesn't work. So I'm going to go and fix that. I'm going to basically move this over, and that should basically solve that problem. And then yeah, start again. Distance is pretty far. Shadowed by success, mask we fail. Hard to find horizons when the ship has sailed. Underwhelmed celebrations, marvelous creation, but the nation has no clue what it's all about. Time's running out, so don't... Sorted. Alright, let me show you what I did. So here's the jig now. You can see the old hole here, and I basically moved it over just 20mm. That was all I needed to actually do to solve it, make it work properly. And I put my pivots on there. This theoretically should be right. It's not quite right because I cocked up the measurement here. I thought that was 22 rather than 20, but doesn't matter, I can fill that up slightly with weld. But look at that, perfect. So that'll be one hinge arm, and then yeah, all the other shapes will wiggle around or whatever. Some of them are longer, some of them are same size as this, etc. But that is exactly what we needed to achieve. I'm all set up. Given that I want to get absolutely beautiful welds for this, I'm gonna sit down just to give myself the best shot of A, setting myself on fire, but also B, having a steady hand. Show you what we got. So I've just tack welded them together, just a couple of little blips on there like that, just to get it all sorted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack all of the various shapes and sizes, arms and so on, to be basically to that stage there, and then I'm going to assemble a hinge and just check that it all works and flows through and all that sort of stuff, because if we have any issues, we have to adjust anything, it's easy just to nick a tack off than it is to have to, if I weld that on both sides like I'm going to eventually, it's a bloody nightmare if I have to undo it all, and you know, I risk basically warping this end and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, so I'm going to tack it all together, assemble it, double check that it works, and then pull it back apart again, weld it up, assemble it, check that it works, and then that should be my hinges done at that stage. Let's get into it. Really excited. West dripping, future is bleak, so grab a lighter, give the sunrise a sneak. So these are coming together really nicely. So as you can see, I'm just chucking one tack on one side, yeah, they basically have exactly the same hole center diameters. I could probably show you like that. I'll line those two up. They are pretty much perfect. Yep. So these sit at slightly different angles to each other, so they're slightly offset from each other, and that's why there's different shapes and so on, is because of the offset. You'll see when we put the hinge together, it basically it's just for clearance. All of those weird bends are just for clearance. So I've done all 4 of the small 30mm control arms. So they are the cheap and easy ones to replace if I've buggered them up, but they seem to come together pretty nice. So I'm confident enough now that I can move on to the big guy. So the big one is the main load-bearing hinge. So the door itself is 80 kg, and if you put a bit of force on there with, you know, wave motion and all that sort of stuff, that 80 kgs is going to go right up. So that's why we've got such a big piece of steel. I don't really care if I've over-engineered it. I'm fine with that. Yeah, what worst case scenario, the door's stronger than it was going to meant to be, so whatever. So let's get into the big guy. Okay, so we're working on this big guy, just trying to figure out, so we've got our height measurement, that's that black line at the back there, but I'm just trying to work out where I need to slice this. So obviously there's going to be a cut down here somewhere, and there'll be a cut down here somewhere, so I'm just trying to figure out where that is exactly. So this one here is quite easy to measure, because I can just, it's a right angle, so I can just go off the back of this, go forward wherever I need to, cut it, done, simple. This other one, this end here, is much harder. So I don't have a specific measurement that goes along there, so I can't just like measure from the center of the curve out, not that that would be very accurate anyway, but I don't have a measurement for that. I've only got a measurement that's taken off this back face out and then trimmed through that dimension there. So if you look at the plan, the top measurement here, 378mm, that goes off the very back edge here of the 6mm stainless, and it's the center of the pivot. So it's basically measured from there out 378mm chop. That's what I need to do. So because it's a bit difficult to measure it, what I'm thinking of doing, I can measure the back one easy enough. So I'm thinking of measuring this one out wherever it needs to go, slice, and then sit it in the jig, and then I'll be able to pretty much get it within about 1 millimeter or so accurate to wherever it needs to be, and then I can just put my line down, square it off, etc., and chop it there. Because remembering that this doesn't have to have absolute precision, this can be 1/2 mil out, because this is mostly just for clearance, that it has to be precise, and 1/2 mil isn't probably going to matter, whereas the pivot has to be bang on, and the jig makes the pivot bang on. So I think that's going to work. I'm just going to try it, and if it doesn't, I can just cut the tacks off and try to do something else, but that's my plan for now. Righto, so if you have a look at this, the 3D mock-up of it, I've ripped the bottom of the plan, but never mind. So you can sort of see there's like a 45-degree cutout on this return back here, and that's allowing to clear the bolts on the mount. So if you see over here, it's basically 25mm or 1 inch. So I'll cut that in now, so that we can, that's going to trim it down like that. So all of these hinges are being designed by Rod McLeod, one of our Patreons over in New Zealand. He's done them all in SolidWorks, so that's why they're all as accurate as they are. So the measurements are pretty precise. Look at that, 347.62 millimeters. Geez, Rod, I'm working with bloody 1 millimeter is good enough over here, mate. So let's get these returns cut, and then we'll tack this side up, and then we'll figure out how we're going to position this one over this side. So it's the first half of the main weight bearer tacked up. So you can see over here it's basically in line with this, like the center of that hole is essentially in line with this beam. See if we can show you on the camera. Oh, it's fractionally off, but it's not going to matter. So what I've got to do now, I'll take one of my pivots. Essentially I've got to trim it so that I can bring this across to the center. So I think that's just going to be a case of doing this, basically just essentially marking it wherever that edge all the way down there is, and then dragging it over and giving it a weld. So I'm just going to get that, I'm going to get this pivot all nice and square, and then I'm going to yeah, trim it up and get that welded over. So trim that corner off, and I cocked up, look at that. So when it was sitting like that and the steel was going out past here, you can sort of see there I drew the line down there, etc., and then I slightly cut off to one side, thinking, you know, the steel, like as it comes around, would move further away from it, but it moves an enormous amount away from it. Much more. It's, yeah, I'm so pissed off at myself that I've done this. So it's the end of the day for me. It's, I don't know, 4 o'clock, something like that. My back's killing me and I'm making dumb mistakes like this, so I'm just going to stop for the night. This is something that I really want to look good on the boat. So what I'm going to do, my plan is I'll cut a small strip, be like 6mm by 6mm. I'll V these out, I'll weld it, see what I mean, tied. I'll weld it so that you basically can't see the weld, and then I'll flapper those off nice and true. And then I'll weld this on here, because at the moment I can get to both sides really easily. So I'm going to just add a bit in, take my time, clean it up, do it properly, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, silly boy. Anyway, we'll fix that tomorrow. Alright, so it's a Sunday morning, the day after the big cock up. I'm pretty confident that I can solve this. I'm feeling pretty energized and positive about doing it, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. And yeah, game for you. If you don't think it's going to work, comment, or you do think it's going to work, comment below, and then in 2 minutes time you'll probably see how it turns out. So this is my plan. So what I've got to do is lengthen the bit that I cut too short. So I'm going to stick this down there like that. That's pretty flush and awesome. I'm going to run a bead along there, and then I'm going to flip it over and run a bead along the other side, and then I'm going to tap it to be straight or whatever it needs to be. I'm then going to flapper that down so you can't actually tell that there's a weld there, because I'm leaving about a, I don't know, 2.5 mil gap, something like that, so that the weld will sink right down in it. I might V it out as well, actually. I think I'll do a bit of a V. Yeah, so I'll do that, and then I'm going to flapper it all down so it's smooth, and then I'm going to cut it the right length and weld it on the jig. So yeah, let me know if you reckon it's going to work. Alright, so this is pass 2, so I've done the other side, I've just done this one. See the weld, I'm pretty happy with them, they came off right. They're going to be pretty much ground back to be flat. Come out a bit so you can see the whole thing. So you can sort of see I've sort of stop-start a couple of spots. I've done that actually to try and reduce the amount of heat that I'm putting into the steel. Yeah, so we'll flapper these back to being flat, and then we'll cut it the right bloody length this time. Righto, so I've given it all a quick polish just to remove any splatter. This is how the join came up. See if we can shade it so you can actually see it. It's about there somewhere, roughly. So you can see this line from the outside of the weld, slightly overlapped it, etc. Doesn't matter actually, because that's going to get trimmed off and then a weld will be over top of that, so that's why I'm not stressed too much about cleaning that one up massively. I've given it a quick skim with the flapper. All of this is actually going to be sandblasted with a really fine grit to give it a really beautiful finish. Yeah, so sanding it with the flapper is just to take off any splatter or stuff like that, but that's pretty much come up absolutely beautiful. I'm really happy with that. Some of you thought this wasn't even going to work. Alright, so I've got my jig back up. You can see the jig and everything there. That's still quite warm. Silly boy. Alright. So, I thought about this, why I made the mistake I did, because I do these things. It's because of the way I turned it. So, yesterday you will recall I did that, drew a line down it, cut it, and then when I brought it in, it didn't work. Simple, right? Why can't I go, firstly, why can't I remove that, which gets me closer to where I need to be, but if I go on that side of it, put it there and draw the line on the other side and cut it, as it goes across, it's going to get tighter and tighter. So it might mean I have to cut it twice, but at least I don't have to, you know, weld something up, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do it that way. There's possibly some of you screaming at me doing it a different way. I can't hear you yet. I'll probably see the comments. Right. Righto, so trimmed it up. It's, I don't know, maybe 5mm, quarter an inch, something like that, bigger than it was yesterday. When I slide it across like this, it's not quite sliding far enough. So I'll bring the camera over and show you what's going on. So I've trimmed it up. It's about 5mm, 6mm, I don't know, what's that, quarter of an inch, bigger than, longer than it was yesterday. When I slide it across, it's not quite sliding far enough, so you can sort of see, if you look down the end, it needs to come over a bit more. But you can also see that I haven't cut it perfectly straight. So what I'm going to do, so at the top here it sticks out a bit, so I'm going to actually, I've just got the flap wheel on, I'm just going to whip off maybe, I don't know, 1/2 mil, and then just keep easing it across. Might take me a couple of goes just to get it across enough. But after the great measuring debacle of 2018 yesterday, I'm really okay having this problem, having to trim it down gently to get it to where I need it. Right, so it's all trimmed up and everything fits in there really nice. Just going to make sure that I've trimmed it to be square, and then I'm going to weld it. Right, stage 1 done. So essentially all of the arms are now tacked together. All the pivots are all tacked onto the arms and everything. What I've got to do now is I'm still waiting on the wall mounts and the door mounts to be bent up and drilled. But yeah, once that's done, I'm hoping that'll be done in the next day or so. But once that's done, I need to assemble the whole lot and then actually run them through all of their movements to make sure that they don't bind up. But this has come up really well. I'm really stoked. The repair I did came up great. So as I showed you earlier, like, can't even tell that there's a repair there, and once I put the weld down there, that'll completely disappear. So, and then all of this will be sandblasted up, so you'll never ever see any of it. So all of these marks and stuff will all disappear. Yep, so that's awesome. I'm really stoked with those. So just waiting on Tom, one of the local Boilermakers, to turn up. It's a Sunday, so I'm not sure if he is going to turn up today. Could be beer related in that. Sorry if you're watching, Tom. Yeah, so I've just got to get these little gadgets. So these things here are basically 75mm or 3-inch, 6mm thick or 1/4 inch 316 stainless. So I just need to need to bend right angles into where those two lines are there, you can see, and that's going to become the mount that bolts to the wall as well as bolts to the door, that takes all of the arms and everything like that. So yeah, really stoked. We are getting very close to having Pantograph hinges. We're making the mounts that bolt the door, the hinge to the wall and hinge to the door. So there's 4 of these little mounts. Tom's bending them up now. So we're going to bend these 90 degrees and then we'll go through and drill. There's what, 12 holes we've got to put in it. So we'll do that on the drill press and get them nice and straight. Alright, so this plate that I've chucked, the stainless plate that I've chucked 4 holes in, is going to become the mount that the hinge bolt. This will be mounted on the door and then the hinge will bolt to this. So what I've got to do is get these little 10mm, I think they're about 30mm long M10 studs, and I need to fasten them in like, let's see if I can get close enough. Come on, camera, in focus. Okay, so anyway, basically I need to stick it through the metal like that and weld it. However, I need that side to be flush. So obviously if you weld it that way, you're going to get a bit of a crap weld, because it's you know, you got nothing for the weld to sort of penetrate into really. So I have a really easy trick. I stick basically I've cut the head off the bolt. I stick the bolt into the drill so it goes in like that way around, if that makes sense, and then spin that on the bench, put my grinder on the side, and then I V off this bolt, and then when I stick it into the hole, I've got a big gap that I can fill right up with weld, and then it makes a huge difference in terms of the strength of the stud sticking through the plate. So I'll show you how I do that, and yeah, might be useful for you guys at home. So you can see, if I can get it in focus, you can see there it's basically V'd right off. When you stick it through, you end up with a heap of gap that you can fill up with weld, so it makes a big difference in terms of strength. This is the first Pendergraft hinge that we assembled, so it's all working. We've figured out how to solve all of the problems and everything. We had a little problem with clearance late yesterday, but that's all solved. So what I'm doing now, as you can see, there's basically just a tack weld holding all of this together, so a couple of tack welds on each beam. So this morning I'm actually going through and welding them up fully. So I've got the jig back out, so I'll show you what I've got here. So this is the jig that we used when we built all of the arms and everything. So I'm going to use that again to hold everything straight and true when we're welding it. And part of the reason why I'm doing that is because as I put heat into this, I actually want this big piece of steel to suck the heat out, because I don't want it to get real hot. If it gets real hot, it starts warping more, and I'm hoping that this big piece of steel is actually going to act like a heat sink and start sucking some of that heat out. So the plan is to bolt each of the arms to this jig, and then run a weld down each side, down each side of that pivot, and I'll do that for all of the arms. So what have we got? 6 arms in total, so I'll do that this morning. So now that I know what I'm doing with like welding them and polishing them up, so I've done 3 of the 6. I've welded 3 of the 6 and I've polished 1 of the 6. So I'll go through now, I'll weld all of them, I'll flapper them all down to that same state, and then yeah, we'll get them down to be blasted. Just got a couple of last minor things to do, and I've got to trim up a little relief in one of the arms so that we can clear a bolt, and also got to trim the brackets that bolt onto the wall and onto the door. Just cut them down to the right size. So apart from that, these hinges are coming along beautifully, so we'll get on to the next stage and start getting them assembled shortly. So as with most things on this boat, some of the things that get complex require quite a bit of thinking. So these are our Pendergraft hinges. They're a very simple beast, but they need quite a lot of precise movement for them to work. And we're about 99% of the way there. So let me show you what my dilemma is that I'm trying to solve at the second. So if I turn these through their full movement, let me just, they're a wee bit stiff because nothing's got any lubrication at the moment. Let me show you what I'm working on. I'll open the door the theoretical door right up. Okay, so as I open it up, this arm here is touching into that bolt there, and the only clearance I have is the width of a washer. So let me show you this. So I don't know if you can quite make it out on the camera, but in between this pivot and this flat 6mm piece of steel here, you have a washer just to provide a bit of guidance, etc. when it's spinning, so it doesn't lock up on anything. So what I need to do is figure out a way to get rid of this bolt so that this arm can swing freely over it. So I'm thinking countersinking this, countersunk a bolt into here of some sort, thread it into here, and then some sort of arrangement at the other end to hold it. That's my thought for now. Other than that, the hinges are going awesome. Yeah, so really stoked with how they're working, and hoping to have them on the wall. So the next step, once I've solved that bolt clearance issue, is to mount them onto the wall, and then I can bolt the door to the hinge, and we can actually start seeing the hinges and door in action. So I need to do a little bit of trim adjustment so that the door sits perfectly level and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, basically, essentially I can still show you it working here. So this is the main load bearing bracket, and then you've got two control arms, one at the top, one at the bottom. And as the door goes through its travel, these two control arms are vital because they stop the door from flapping. We tried it with two, and yeah, basically it'll flap around as it opens. So having three keeps it perfectly parallel and perfectly stiff and solid the whole way through. So let me show you it working. So that's the door fully opened. I'm going to do a bit of a zoom up. You can actually see how little hinge etc is in the way. So you can sort of see like there's bugger all sticking out. So you can, you got really good access through and so on. So it's last thing on a Saturday. I'm knackered, so gonna stop for the day. Not 100% sure what Jess has got lined up for us tomorrow. Jess, as you may know, Jess runs all the scheduling on the boat and keeping the jobs in line and all that sort of stuff. We had some interesting, for people that have seen the tiling the bathroom episode, I think it is, and a previous episode to that, we mounted the toilet, but the base of the ceramic toilet actually cracked. And TMC were awesome, so yep, big thumbs up to TMC and BLA in Australia. Those guys sorted out a warranty claim on it, so we have our new toilet in this box here. So we're going to be fitting that. We've just grabbed some actually another Aussie company that we use. This stuff here, let's get in the light. So Fixtech are a company that we use for Sika and silicons and stuff like that. It's awesome stuff. So if you haven't used it before, don't hesitate to use this stuff. It's fantastic. So yeah, what are we going to do? We've got to mount the toilet. We'll get that done, and what else are we doing? Probably working on the other door on the other side tomorrow. I did manage to get I'll show you these. I did manage to get the rear doors mounted on, so you can sort of see that they're all bolted. That's them in their swung out position, so that's how open the back end becomes. So that's pretty cool for us. We've not been able to have them on for a while. So next stage is, if I just close one of these up, so you can see this side's all a bit sort of manky, needs to be sanded and a bit of paint and whatever all dealt around with it. So we're going to go around in the next, probably tomorrow actually, go around and paint all of those and deal with the rust on those. And then finally we have the freezer room. So in the freezer room there's quite a lot of painting to do. So that room, it's a huge room, and it just takes forever to paint it because there's just so much area. So yeah, we're going to get stuck in and get that painted. Yeah, so all progress, I suppose.